It is the middle of January in the valley, and the snow has come up over the bottom step, and the wind has been working the corner of the barn all night like it means to take it. You are standing in a cellar under a farmhouse, and the light through the one small window is the gray light of a day that never quite got started. In front of you there is a shelf. It runs the whole length of that stone wall, and it is heavy with glass. Jars and jars and jars of them, and the light catches them so the whole wall glows like a church window nobody ever paid for. There is deep red in some and gold in others, and there is one row down at the end the color of old ivory, and the woman who keeps this cellar takes down a jar from that ivory row and sets it in your two hands, and it is cold and heavier than you thought it would be. And she tells you, plain as if she were telling you the day of the week, that there is meat in that jar, beef, and that it went in there before her youngest boy could walk, and that boy is shaving now. Meat, in a glass jar, on a shelf, no freezer, no electric, no power line has ever come up that lane. That jar sat on that wall through summers that would wilt you and winters that would kill you, and the seal held, and the meat is good. She twists the lid, and it lets go with a sound like a small sigh, and the smell that comes up is beef and salt and nothing else at all. Nothing sour, nothing wrong, just supper, waiting, patient as a stone, for 11 years. Now I want you to sit with that a moment, because you have been taught your whole life that food is a thing racing away from you, that the clock starts the minute it leaves the ground or the animal, and your only weapon against that clock is cold, and cold costs money every hour of every day. You have a machine in your kitchen humming right now, and maybe another in the garage full of white frost and things you have forgotten. I am not going to tell you those machines are worthless, but I want you to know what they are. They are the new thing. The freezer in your garage is younger than some of the jars on that wall. For thousands of years before any of it, folks put food into vessels and closed them, and ate it a year later, 2 years later, 10, and they did not lose their children to it. The machine did not save us. It only let us forget the one thing that made it all work, and that one thing is what I am going to hand you today. My name is Amos. I am Amish, and I farm a piece of bottomland in a green valley here in Ohio, the same ground my father worked and his father before him. I did not learn what I am about to tell you from a book, or a school, or a man in a white coat. I learned it at my grandmother's elbow, on a stool at a stove that was too tall for me, with steam on the windows and jars rattling soft in the kettle like they were talking to each other. She had burn scars on both forearms. She could not have told you the temperature of anything, and she never once made a person sick. This is not knowledge I own. It is knowledge that passed through me on its way to you. Now some of you have been with me a while, and you will remember I already put honey and dry beans and maple syrup and dried herbs in your hands, and I am not giving you those again. That is done, and I do not repeat myself. Today is not about foods. Today is about the jar, and what happens inside it, which is a thing almost nobody teaches anymore. There are 5 families of work on that glowing wall. There is the rule that governs every one of them, which I will give you first, because without it the rest is dangerous. There is the family of the sour jars, the tomatoes and the pickles, and the eggs and the apple butter. There is the family of the golden jars, the butter and the lard and the cheese, and yes, I said cheese, and no, I am not joking with you. There is the family of the heavy jars, the meat and the bone broth, which is where folks get hurt if they get sloppy. And there is the family that needs no fire at all, the kraut and the sour roots, oldest of the lot. 5 families, 15 jars, and one rule underneath all of it, holding it up like a foundation stone. So before I hand you a single jar, I have to hand you the rule that sits under every one of them, because if you take nothing else from me today, take this. Everything you put in a jar is either sour or it is not. That is the whole division. A tomato with lemon in it is sour. A cucumber in vinegar is sour. Apple butter, cooked down with the fruit's own tartness, is sour. And sour is a guard that never sleeps. The little bugs that spoil food cannot make a living in sour. They come to the door, and the door is acid, and they die on the step. And they keep dying on the step for 10 years. because acid does not get tired, and acid does not go home. So for the sour jars, plain boiling water in a kettle is enough. You set the jars down in it, covered over with an inch of water, and you let it roll for the time the food asks for, and that is done. But some things are not sour. Meat is not sour. Bone broth is not sour. Lard is not sour. And in a jar with no guard at the door, there is one thing that can live, and it is the worst thing there is: botulism. It comes from a spore, and a spore is a seed the bug goes into when times are hard, and that seed does not care about your boiling water. Here is the plain fact, and I want you to hear it slow. Water boils at 212 degrees. That is as hot as it goes. Put it on a bigger fire and it will not go 1 degree higher. It will only boil away faster. And 212 does not kill that spore. It never has. It can boil all afternoon, and that spore sits in there like a stone in a creek. But a pressure canner, lid clamped and the weight on, holds the steam in and drives the heat past the boil to 240 degrees. And 240 kills it dead. Sour, water. Not sour, pressure. There is no third choice, and the folks who argue with it are the ones you read about. And you already know this in your own body, whether you ever thought on it or not. Think of a cut on your hand. If you have something stinging to put on it, the antiseptic, that sting is the guard sitting in the wound killing what would fester there, and it keeps sitting there while you go about your day. But if you have nothing to put on it, if there is no guard, then you must clean it out properly, all the way down, before you ever wrap it. One way you post a sentry. The other way, you burn the ground first. It is the same choice, and your grandmother made it every single time she filled a jar, and she made it without ever once saying the word acid out loud. Let me start you where it is safest to start, with the jars that carry their own God inside them. Tomatoes first, and there is a trap here that catches good people. Your great-grandmother's tomatoes were sour enough on their own. The old heirloom varieties had a bite to them, but the tomatoes you can buy the seed for now have been bred sweeter and milder, year on year, until the bite is near gone out of them, and a mild tomato is not sour enough to guard itself. So you add the guard back. 1 tablespoon of lemon juice in every pint jar before the lid goes on. 1 tablespoon. It does not make the tomatoes taste of lemon, it makes them safe, and it costs you nothing. Then the water bath, and they will sit on your shelf red as a barn door for years. Pickles next, and pickles are the easy ones, because you are drowning them in vinegar, and vinegar is the guard in a bottle. Cucumbers, beans, beets, whatever you have too much of in August. Into the jar, brine over the top, 10 minutes in the boiling water bath. That is all a pickle has ever asked of anybody. Pickled eggs are the same story. 2 cups of vinegar to 1 cup of water, 2 tablespoons of sugar and 1 tablespoon of salt, poured hot over hard eggs in a jar, and 10 minutes in the bath. And apple butter, which my grandmother made outdoors in a great kettle over a fire, with somebody stirring it the whole time, 6 hours, 8 hours, taking turns, because if you stop stirring it scorches, and the whole day is ruined, and everybody knows whose turn it was. It cooks down until a spoonful stands up on a plate instead of running. Then into the jars with a 1/4 inch of headspace, and 10 minutes in the bath, and that is a winter's worth of breakfast. Now I want to take you to the shelf where the jars glow gold, because this is the part where folks tell me I am lying. You can put butter in a jar, not in the cold, on a shelf, in the dark, for years, but not the butter as it comes off the churn, and here is why, and this is the piece that makes the whole thing click. Butter is not just fat. Butter is fat with water hiding in it, and little bits of milk besides, and it is the water that spoils. The fat itself is near immortal, so you melt it, slow, and you let it sit there and mutter, and the water goes off as steam, and the milk solids fall to the bottom and go brown. You pour off the clear gold that is left, leaving the brown behind, and that gold is nothing but fat, with nothing in it to dye. Into hot jars, 60 minutes in the water bath. 60, and it tastes nutty and rich a year on, and the whole world calls that ghee, and pays dear for a little tin of it, and it is butter with the water taken out. Lard is the same idea done bigger. Fat trimmings in a heavy pot on the lowest fire you can hold, and you leave it there about 3 hours, and you do not rush it, because rushing it browns it, and browned lard tastes like the pig it came from. When it has all gone to liquid, you pour it through a cheesecloth, and the cloth catches every last speck that is not pure fat. And here the rule reaches out and grabs you by the collar. Lard is not sour. There is no guard in it anywhere. So lard goes in the pressure canner, 10 pounds, 90 minutes, and no shortcuts, no matter how clean it looks in the jar. And then there is the cheese, and I have watched grown men refuse to believe this one. Hard cheese only. Mind, a good firm cheddar or the like, never the soft ones. You grate it and melt it down gentle, and you put in a 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda for every pound of cheese. That is the trick, and it is the whole trick. Without it, the fat splits out and rises, and you get a jar of grease with a sad rubber puck at the bottom. The soda holds it together so it stays cheese instead of coming apart into its pieces. 40 minutes in the water bath, and it sets up firm and slices clean. And you already know this coming apart in your own kitchen, on a small scale, without ever naming it. Think of a gravy that breaks on you, or a sauce that goes to a slick of oil floating on a puddle, and how it will never come back together no matter how hard you beat at it. Fat wants to leave. Fat wants to sit on top and be by itself. Everything my grandmother did with a fat was either taking the water out of it so it could not spoil, or holding it together so it could not leave. Here is where I have to slow down and speak careful, because this is the ground where folks get hurt, and where the Amish are stricter than any factory you will ever tour. The meat. And the first thing I tell you is the thing that sounds wrong. You do not add liquid, not water, not broth, nothing. You pack the raw meat into the jar in chunks, 1 teaspoon of salt to a quart, 1 inch of headspace at the top, and it goes in the pressure canner at 10 pounds for 90 minutes. And what happens in there is the marvel of it. The meat sweats. It gives up its own juices under that heat, and by the time it comes out, every jar is sitting in a rich dark broth that you never poured in. The meat made its own gravy. It had it all along. Bone broth is the sister to it. Bones, water, long slow hours, and here is how you know you did it right, and it is the prettiest test in all of this. Let a cup of it go cold. If it sets up wobbly, like a jelly, if you can tip the cup and the whole of it leans over as one piece, then you have pulled the collagen out of those bones and you have done well. If it stays water in the cup, you did not cook it long enough. And then, because broth has no more acid in it than a glass of milk, it goes in the pressure canner. No acid, no water bath. Ever. Not for a small batch, not because you are in a hurry, not because your neighbor does it and has never had trouble. Your neighbor has been lucky. Luck is not a method. Now the 4th family needs no stove at all, and that is exactly why folks distrust it. The sour roots and the kraut, cabbage, shredded fine, and 3 tablespoons of salt for every 5 pounds of it. You work that salt in with your hands until the cabbage weeps its own water, and you pack it in a crock under that brine with a weight on it, and you leave it in a cool corner 3 weeks, 6 weeks, however long it takes, and you put no vinegar in it. None, not a drop. I want to be plain about that because half the recipes you will find will have you pour vinegar over cabbage and call it kraut, and that is not kraut. That is a pickle wearing kraut's coat. Real kraut makes its own sour. There are little workers living on the leaves of that cabbage already, put there by God and not by you, and in the salt and the dark they wake up and they eat the sugars, and they make the acid themselves. The cabbage builds its own guard from the inside. Roots go the same way. Carrots and turnips and beets, 2 tablespoons of salt to the quart, kept somewhere between 32 and 50 degrees. And you will know they are ready when the bubbling stops. While it bubbles, the work is going on. When it goes quiet, the work is done, and the guard is posted. And now let me give you the small thing that is not small at all, and if you remember one habit from me, let it be this one. When your jars come out and cool, and you hear them tick, and the lids pull down tight, take the rings off. Set them in a drawer and store your jars naked with nothing but the flat lid on, and here is why, and it is a mean little truth. If a smear of food got caught under the edge of that ring when you filled it, the ring will hold the lid down snug and pretty. It will look sealed. It will feel sealed. And it will be lying to you because the ring is doing the holding, not the seal, and underneath it the food is going bad in the dark on your own shelf. We call that a false seal, and the ring is what makes it possible. Strip the ring off and a false seal has nothing to lean on. The lid comes loose in your hand and tells you the truth on the spot, instead of a year from now at your daughter's table. Fill it, seal it, cool it, strip it. Now here comes the turn, and I want you to lean in for it, because it is not the one you are expecting. Go to your cupboard and take down a can, any can, and look at the date stamped on the bottom of it. You have been reading that date your whole life, as if it were the day the food inside dies. It is not. It has never been. It is the day the company stops standing behind it. It is the last day they will promise you the peaches taste like peaches. It is a legal line, not a biological one. Nothing happens to that food on that date. The food cannot read, and I am not going to tell you there is a villain in this, that men in a room decided to trick you, because I do not believe that, and I will not sell you something I do not believe. It is simpler and nearly worse. Somebody has to be able to say when their promise runs out, and once it runs out, the easiest thing in the world is for you to buy another one. Nobody had to conspire. The money just flows downhill, same as water. And here is what got lost in it. My grandmother never read a date in her life. There were no dates. She had something better, and it took her 40 years to build, and it lived in her eyes and her nose and her thumb. She looked at the lid to see if it had gone dome-shaped. She listened for the sound when it opened. She smelled it before she poured it. That is not a date. That is judgment, and judgment is what we traded away. But hear this next part twice as clear, because it is the sharp edge of the same knife. Reading a jar for yourself does not mean you get to be loose about it. It means the opposite. The stamp on the can was the factory doing your thinking for you, and if you are going to do your own thinking, you had better be more careful than they were, not less. That is why the Amish are fussy about this to the point of being tiresome. We are not rebels here. We are stricter. So I need to stop and speak to you plain for a moment, the way my grandmother would have, with her hand flat on the table. Because this is food, and food done wrong does not just disappoint you, it can take somebody from you. I would rather you trust me than be impressed by me, so hear all of this. Start small. Do one batch, a few jars, not a wall of them. Follow the times exactly as they are written, not near enough, exactly, because those numbers were not guessed at, they were paid for by people finding out the hard way. Low-acid food goes in the pressure canner every single time, and if you do not own one, then do not can meat. Do the pickles and wait until you can buy the canner. There is no shame in waiting. There is shame in guessing. Put an inch of lemon sour into your mild tomato. Leave the headspace you are told to leave. Strip your rings. And then, when you go to open a jar someday, look at it first. If the lid is bulging up, if the liquid is cloudy when it should be clear, if it hisses at you or spurts, if there are bubbles crawling up when the jar has been sitting still, if it smells the least bit off, you throw it out. You throw it out without tasting it. You do not taste it to check. You do not give a little to the dog to check. The thing that would hurt you does not always announce itself, and one bad jar is worth less than one bad week in a hospital, and it is worth a great deal less than a funeral. Safety does not take a back seat to tradition. Tradition is how we learn to be safe. So let me set the whole of it in your hands. The rule first, always the rule. Sour, and water is enough, because the guard is already inside, and he never sleeps. Not sour, and you need the pressure, because water stops at 212 and the spore does not care, and the canner climbs to 240 and the spore does. Then the sour jars, tomatoes with a tablespoon of lemon to give back the bite that was bred out, pickles and eggs in vinegar at 10 minutes, apple butter stirred for 8 hours and given a 1/4 inch of room. Then the golden jars, butter melted till the water leaves, lard rendered 3 hours slow, and strained through cloth and pressured 90, cheese with a 1/4 teaspoon of soda to the pound, so the fat cannot walk away. Then the heavy jars, meat with nothing but salt because it makes its own broth, and bone broth that must wobble when it is cold. Then the jars with no fire, kraut with 3 tablespoons of salt to 5 pounds and never a drop of vinegar, and roots at 2 tablespoons to the quart, done when the bubbling goes quiet, and the ring comes off the day it cools, always, so no jar can lie to you. That is the whole of it, handed to you the same as it was handed to me, only I did not have to stand on a stool to reach it. Now I want to hear from you, and I mean that true. Tell me down below where you live, what corner of this world you are sitting in tonight, and tell me what your own people put up in jars before the machines came. Was it your grandmother, or an aunt, or the old woman down the road that everybody's mother sent them to? Was there a thing she made that you have never been able to make taste the same, and do you still have the jars? Somebody in your family knew this once, and I would like to hear their way, even the bits that seem too small to write down. Because this knowledge does not live in books, it lives in kitchens and in cellars, and in the memory of folks like you. And every time one of you writes down what your people did, a little piece of it gets saved from being forgotten. I read every single comment, every one. And before you go, let me tell you where I am taking you next, because it has nothing to do with jars and everything to do with the same stubbornness. I am going to take you to the day that half of my people celebrate when the rest of the world has already dragged the tree out to the curb and put the lights back in the box for another year. That is no accident, and it is not laziness. There is an argument underneath it about who got the calendar wrong, older than this country, and it has never been settled. I will tell you what happens in a barn that morning before the sun is up, and what is not there, which will surprise you more than what is. Come back for it.